Okay, today we're going to do infinite power towers, which are quite good fun and quite surprising. In the previous video we looked at the order of brackets in towers, and we looked specifically at whether n to the n to the n was the same as n to the n to the n. We found that generally speaking absolutely it is not the case. We're going to expand on that a little bit today. If you haven't watched that previous video, I suggest that you watch it. One of the things that we did discover in the previous video was that n to the n to the n is the same thing as n to the n squared, and we're going to use that in a couple of minutes. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the power tower of root 2. So root 2 to the power of 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 root 2, etc., ad infinitum. And the question that we're going to analyse is whether or not this actually gives us a finite answer or an infinite answer. And the answer is it gives both, depending on whether or not, depending on how we use the brackets. So there's two ways. The first way is that we can go, let's call it the bottom-up method, where we work this bit out, and then the answer to that we raise to the power of root 2, and then the answer to that we raise to the power of root 2, and then the answer to that we raise to the power of root 2, etc., etc. The answer to that we raise to the power of root 2. Let's just have a look at the other method that you could possibly do, which we'll call the bottom down method. So what we'll do on the on the top down method, what we'll do on the top down method is first of all we will analyse that, and then we will raise this to that power, and then we will raise this to that power, and then we will raise this to that power until we get down to the bottom one. So let's start with the first one, and let's just a little bit. So root 2 to the power of root 2, to the power of root 2. Okay, well we know if we have the bracket here, from the previous session we knew that n to the n to the n is n to the n squared. So we know that this equals root 2 to the power of root 2 squared, and root 2 squared is 2, so that equals root 2 to the power of 2, and again root 2 squared is 2, so that equals 2. So we know that this bit, the bottom bit, is 2. And now what we've got to do is raise 2 to the power of root 2. We carry on moving up our infinite power tower. Now root 2 is around 1.414 and a bit. Clearly now we are going to get an infinite, it's going to get infinitely large, because we have a number here which is greater than 1, and we are raising it to the power of a number which is greater than 1. And so the more times we raise it to the power, it's clear that it's going to be infinite. And in actual fact, a graph of this, if we look at it just by raising, each time we raise to a power, the graph is going to be the exponential, something like that. Okay, so that one is quite simple. Let's do the other one, what we call the top down. So let's redo our root 2 to the power of 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 root 2, etc., etc. Let's imagine that we could possibly get right to the top of this, and it is infinite, so we can't, but let's imagine that we can. Now let's look at this, root 2 to the power of root 2. Well, we know that root 2 to the power of 2 is 2, and we know that root 2 to the power of something less than 2, and root 2 is clearly less than 2, therefore must be less than 2. We don't need to know what it is, all we need to know is that it's less than 2. And so, therefore, when we raise root 2 here to this power, which is less than 2, we have root 2 to the power of x, where x is less than 2, so we know that it is still going to be less than root 2 to the power of 2. And then when we raise this, which we know is less than 2, and we raise that to root 2, we still have root 2 to the power of y, where y is less than 2, and root 2 to the power of y, which is less than 2, is going to be less than 2. And we can keep going down, all the way down to the bottom, until we get the bottom one, where we have root 2, and all of this, by exactly the same argument we've just used, is less than 2, so root 2 to the power of something which is less than 2 is going to be less than 2. So if we do it top down, we get convergence at something which is less than 2. And in actual fact, in the next video, we will show that the convergence is at 2. So if we do it root 2 to the root 2 to the root 2 to the root 2 to the root 2 ad infinitum, and we do it with the brackets this way, going down rather than up, the answer to that is 2. And we'll prove that in the next video. Now, Excel or Google, if you want to, or Google Sheets, if you want to confirm this, it's actually a little bit tricky because you have to do it in a specific way. So let's just have a quick look at that. Let's just open Google Sheets. Okay, so we've got a Google Sheets here. So what we're going to do is we are going to put here square root of 2. And let's call this one the bottom up. And let's call this one here the top down. So we got the bottom up. Let's put in here the square root of 2. So that's our first. That's our bottom one. And here is again we put equals the square root of 2. Okay, so far so good. Right, so that's easy. Now the bottom up, what we have to do now is equals that multiplied by, and we put a dollar in there, $B, $8. So all we are doing is that is root 2, to the power of, root 2 to the power of $B, $8. So that's root 2 to the power of root 2. Root 2 to the power of root 2, which we have as 1.63. And if we keep on moving that down, we will see that that is exactly what we thought, which is exponential as we keep on raising to the power of root 2. This is the bottom up. If we want to do the top down, we do equals square root of 2 to the power of that. So again, for the root 2 to the power of root 2, regardless of which way we do it, bottom up or top down, we get exactly the same. But then once we move that down, we can see that that will converge at 2. No matter how far we go down, that one will just keep getting closer and closer to 2. So you do have to be careful when you use Excel or Google Sheets. If you want it to be the bottom up, i.e. the brackets from the bottom going upwards, or if you want it from the brackets top down, Excel and Google is slightly